Welcome, Joe. How are you, man?
Doing great, Chris. Excited to be here.
I wanted to take this moment here to take a look at our backgrounds. Uh, this is is that the one? Yeah, I think that's the one. I spent about an hour this morning. Oh yeah, see, there's the Z. We've got our special Princeton Kaizen lamp in the background there. It's it's an interesting opening because have you ever watched the making of a Mid-Journey photograph? Like as it sort of like it comes out of the clouds, it just sort of emerges in this like cloud of smoke, and then suddenly there's this small amount of definition, a little bit more, and you're kind of watching something synthetic get made, and it's kind of fascinating in a strange way. Um, do you what's your like best? What tool do you use the most? Do you love the most in the AI generative space?
Yeah, so it's really still Chat GPT. It really is. I've been using Bard for some programming stuff, but really been Chat GPT
Yeah,
still.
I gotta say, I think that Chat GPT is like a much better collaborator creatively than Bard. I know Bard has the ability to use the web, and that's one of the things that drives you a little nutty. Because if you want to like get it to get ChatGPT to like scroll through somebody's bio and understand, something from a web page, you just kind of have to cut and paste it in there. So it's a bit of a pain. Um, but it does seem like why is that? Why is one piece of AI better collaboratively than the other?
It really comes down to the ability to work within our workflow. So we do use Jasper AI quite a lot for social media content, but that's not something I do. That's something my team does. But they do use that quite often. For me, it just works better in my personal workflow.
Got it. Well, I can't think of a better person to launch inside the innovation studio than you, Joe. I should give people a proper introduction. I was just waiting for some more folks to filter in. We are trying to start promptly at 11:30, although this is not going to be our regular slot. We are looking to do Tuesdays at noon, but you know, because we are talking with some really fabulous innovators like Joe, we kind of have to sometimes work around folks' schedules. So we'll see if we can make that happen on a regular basis. So to introduce Joe later this month, we will start recording Joe's podcast, AI for Business, and he and I have got some great stuff in store there. He's providing our Edison subscribers with exclusive training minis and hosting an expert mastermind community for our Curry subscribers. Just to kind of get the basics out of the way, here's the bio. Joe is the founder and CEO of TrueVersity, which is a training and consulting company. He's an author, a speaker, a former chief AI engineer. He's really basically done it all. He's published 3 O'Reilly books on AI technology and has taught over 10,000 students on Udemy, Anaconda, and Pact. He has led AI teams at Fortune 500 companies, and that all sounds great. But I want to start with how you begin your bio. Joe Papa solves a problem most companies don't even know they have: AI. He saves them from destruction. Can we unpack that a little? You save them from
Let's get
destruction.
emotional right off the bat. I love it. So I'll sum it up in one sentence, and that's AI is the biggest opportunity and the biggest threat facing business today.
Wow. Okay, so start with the threat. We'll come around to the opportunity because I think that's why people are tuning in. But you know, I brought this up earlier when I was talking with Ari. my daughter's school basically just banned AI altogether. And they just can't wrap their head around figuring out, how to police AI jurism, whatever it might be, but at the same time, you've got to learn how to use it. So does it require a license? Do you need to be 18 to, have a license? What are the dangers and what are the pitfalls that we're facing?
Yeah, that's a popular topic. I have a lot to say about that.
Why don't you move Joe back over that Z? I just,
Feel a little
yeah.
little close to you there, Chris.
Well, I mean, he's the star, not the Z on my lamp from Mid Journey. All right, so we're talking about licensing. We're talking about, I think Princeton Kaizen wants to get into the field, and I think Trueversity is in the field of, not necessarily building out like we in the fall. We're going to have a summit called AI Forward, and our focus is we want to be able to present protocols for AI-enabled creators, or AI for creation, or for content, whatever it may be. There's all sorts of different things, but that's going to be the focus for us. And I was sort of bouncing back and forth between the idea, well, do we want to call it protocols? It sounds a little bit, sort of, very heady, but it does seem to be like that's where we are, where we really do need to teach people how to use it. There's so many different scandals that have erupted for people using it for, the wrong purposes and things like that. So why do you think that AI is the biggest threat to business?
So the reason why I say it's the biggest threat is because from a competitive advantage standpoint, is there with the release of ChatGPT, there's been this, for lack of a better word, explosion of these AI tools that are low cost, they're easy to use, they're accessible by anybody, and businesses today can jump in, start using these tools, and do things 10 to 100 times faster than they were doing before. So if you're in a marketplace where you're a competitive marketplace and your competitors are using these tools to go 100x faster, it's going to put you at a disadvantage. So that's where I see the threat being. I mean, the secondary threat would be AI, replacing or taking away your market share because there's an AI tool. If you're in a space where AI could possibly be an alternative to your products and services, that could also be a threat. Marketing agencies are certainly the number one space there where AI could be a threat. But I think that's secondary. I think the primary threat that AI poses on a business is that, you're just ignoring it right now. And your competitors are not ignoring it. They're jumping on and they're trying these things in the early stages, which will give people a significant advantage going forward.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you kind of look at it as like this is the steroid era on steroids, but if you're not juicing, you're going to get beat by somebody who is. I mean, that's probably an inexact metaphor, but it does seem to me like the biggest threat to business is not getting your head wrapped around it quickly enough, because it's a game changer. It really is. I feel like there's life before the introduction of Chat GPT. What was it, last November? And then life after. And you were like the man for the moment. I think that the AI in the popular consciousness really kind of hit hard once ChatGPT was released and people could actually get into it and go, wow, it may not be able to write, my term paper for me, but it could certainly be a great, assistant and collaborator. And, as long as you're not using it for historical research or anything that, doesn't take into account the bullshit factor behind most of the content that comes out of ChatGPT. But, in terms of like mapping out ideas, creating content, et cetera, and I look at this maybe more as a publisher, but I think that's true for it's true for operations, it's true for manufacturing, it's true for, anything with some automation in it. AI really is, since November, top of mind. And is that some of it is hype, but is You're basically telling me that it's not hype, that this is like, you've got to wrap your head around it now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to point out a couple of things. The first thing is that ChatGPT is really 1% of what I consider to be artificial intelligence and machine learning. There's a far more than what you could do with the technology that's available today. What changed on November 30th of last year when ChatGPT was released was it went mainstream. So now anybody can go use the tool for free and do some amazing things with it, especially from content creation, ideation, summarization, just to almost like a sounding board is like if you're stuck trying to do something, whether it's in your personal life or in business, you can just go to ChatGPT and like ask it a question, and that sometimes gets you unstuck. So it was the simplicity of the tool itself that anybody could go on there and just start using it and start getting amazing results right away. That changed everything. Now people have to think, well, how could this be used in business? Right? A lot of business owners on the call today. I remember when I posted on Facebook when Chat GPT first came out, I said, this is amazing. Everybody should start using this and seeing what the capabilities are available to you. The teachers freaked out. All my teacher friends were freaking out. They're like, oh man, this is making our lives so much harder because now we can't tell whether the student wrote something or if they use this tool. And I'm like, 100%. I mean, it was kind of unfair that OpenAI just released this without any warning. And you have school systems and companies, it was from both sides. School systems, like immediately they're like, well, what do we do about this? It's almost like COVID all over again. It's like all of this sudden there's like a shock that we have to solve this problem that we never thought of before. And, committees are being formed. On the corporate side, whether you're a small business or whether you're a large enterprise, now decisions have to be made of, do we block this in our firewall? Do we allow employees to use this tool? And there's reasons why they would block it, right? So I think without warning, companies and schools really had almost no choice but to block it until they figured out, how do we deal with this effectively and allow people to use it properly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, small high schools are not set up to do it. I don't even think universities have really been able to wrap their head around it. But I wonder if you can kind of look at AI as, okay, it's going to give you a C paper. Maybe I'll give you a B- paper. This is me as a writer and a editor and a producer looking at it and going like, okay, I know what I get from ChatGPT, but I think the taking of ChatGPT and putting it into a doc and then shaping it and then maybe taking it back in and, saying, well, what about this, et cetera, that's the human hand. It's the process of taking Midjourney into Photoshop and putting the little Z on the lamp. It's like taking Opus Pro and saying, okay, this is giving us a good clip marker. We have an hour-long piece of content, and Opus Pro is telling us where to do it. But now let's give it to an editor and see what they can do with that. They just took out, an hour of somebody going through and marking the clips because they found great clips, but everything's kind of, jumbly, et cetera. You could certainly up the ante on the production value. So if you suddenly say, well, this just raises everybody's, the expectations you're going to have, out of the gate using ChatGPT, you get a C paper, but if you want to get a B, and maybe that C paper suddenly is now like a D paper or, it's that process of teaching people how to use these tools effectively and make sure that you're building authentic, an authentic nylon cotton blend, right? It's a little synthetic, it's a little organic, and it's that blend that can be, actually create a whole new art form. I think that's coming, right?
Yeah, I think when you consider the end product, whether it's an article or a piece of music or a piece of art or a research paper or whatever the end product is, there's going to be a certain degree of human elements to that, right? And I think of it like um, writing a book. Some authors choose to use a ghostwriter, right? They have ideas. It's their ideas, their structure, and then the ghostwriter actually writes the words to it. But when you read a book that somebody actually wrote themselves with their own words and their own writing abilities, it's different. I mean, I feel like it's different. Not that there's, books that are written with ghostwriters are just as effective, right? There's really, really good books written that way. But I believe there's a certain element of humanness to content when you add that final piece to it.
You know what I found is if you can create a good organic, you know, piece, right? I tend to write long form. I was trained originally as a journalist. I'm kind of wordy to begin with. So I tend to write, fairly long. But the best thing that ChatGPT has been able to do for me is I send it in there and go, okay, can you break this into chunks or do something that, is just like a little editorial wizard, and it's got all of the original content and concepts, et cetera. But, it's better structured and it's easier to read and it's got a lot more to it. So there's obviously AI for operations, automating manufacturing. You could build a knowledge base. You could send a military drone on a kill mission. There's all kinds of uses for AI, but where do you think the biggest potential? You did say that there was the threat, but also an opportunity for business. Where is the earliest stage opportunity for businesses to employ AI?
Mm, yeah, absolutely. Good question. So my background's in research and development, right? So I've worked research and development 25 years. Used to work at Bell Labs with some of the, actually the guy, Jan LeCun, who's the head of AI at Meta, Facebook. We used to work in the same building back in the late 90s. The technology has been there for a long time. It recently, more technology has evolved, and it's evolving at a faster rate on the research side. Where there's an immediate low hanging fruit now with these large language models and the APIs that are provided for them. So the API, to give you a little sort of a basic idea of how this stuff gets into the wild, is you have research teams, they build these models, they train these models on immense amounts of data. And once they have something that they want to release, now they usually create a service that runs in the cloud, for example, a service where people can access this. Now you can send inputs into it, get outputs, and that's through this thing they call application programming interface, right? API. So people could build applications, other companies could build applications and use their models on the back end. Well, now that that's available, there's a enormous amount of tools that could be used, and they're low cost and easy to use. You could train a virtual assistant, you could train an entry level employee to use these tools. So to get back to your question, where is the biggest opportunity? I look at it as basically three pillars, and then there's a final piece that kind of affects all three pillars. But the three pillars are marketing, sales, and the customer experience. Okay. So if you're a business, I ask you to think about those three areas, right? Marketing, sales, and the customer experience, and just walk through each one. So with marketing, the question you ask is, am I getting too many leads, right? So as a business, are you getting too many leads, too many customers coming into your business, right? If you have a brick and mortar shop, are you having too many people walk through the door, right? If you have an online company, are you getting too many people reach out to you, call your number, email you, click the links on your websites? Are you getting too many of those? And if the answer is no, I want more of that, then start with marketing, right? Start with marketing and look at your processes in your marketing and ask yourself, how can I do that in a smarter way? What's a smarter version of that look like? Okay. And I would recommend people start there.
Well, I think you're talking about where I obviously coming at this as a content guy, right? I think you're talking about AI for storytelling and for marketing and for social media and influencer marketing and for performance marketing, lead generation. One of the things I found when you were doing Google ads was you were creating, uh, you know, a headline, a subhead, a picture, and text. But you were doing four different variations of that, and Google was going like, "Let's try this headline, let's try that, let's try that." And this was, a couple. This has been going on for a while. Google's been doing that for a while. That's not quite AI. That's just basically, you know, cut and paste learning by the machine. But what you can do now is, I mean, I've seen people do this, like, I've seen the start site on Instagram. I have to go back and check on it and see if it got to 1 million. But he said he asked ChatGPT, how do I get to 1 million users in 30 days? And he said he just did everything ChatGPT told him to do. I don't know that that's actually, I feel like there's so many people out there who are pushing like websites in 60 seconds. And a lot of it is just kind of BS because, like, again, I think you're going to get that, C paper, but you're going to get that A+ structure. You're going to get the hashtags in there. You're going to get everything you need. But, like, in order for it to like actually like, people are going to start to understand that the content that they're reading is synthetic. They're going to develop a nose for it, don't you think? I guess that's not quite a question, but maybe a riff.
I think no doubt there will be some sense of that. And mind you, ChatGPT didn't start this. I mean, there's been tools for years that content creators been using to create content through AI. There's a lot of content, or before November last year, there was a lot of AI generated content that was out, on the internet and social. So it's nothing that's new. If everybody's using GPT 3.5, then yeah, there's kind of like a some almost standardized structure to it. But as these tools evolve, and the content that's created by them evolves, is certainly going to be differentiated. And I believe that most processes are not 100% AI generated. So you may use a tool, like we use Jasper AI a lot for our social media content. And it creates, 80-90% of what it is, but it's not 100%. So we still need a human to go in there and tweak it a little bit to match our brand, to match our brand voice. And the tools will get better at that as well. But I don't think, I think I agree with you that it'll be obvious. Like if you're watching somebody's social media channel and it's always like this dry, certain format that feels like AI, I think that's going to be obvious.
Well, I think that as I had a book packaging business, and it was basically I spent a number of years helping to turn domain experts into authors. I was kind of that ghostwriter packager guy earlier in my career, and what strikes me as a guy who can kind of look at it as an editorial strategist, maybe, and somebody who's like, okay, well, how would you build a knowledge base in an innovation, which is what we're focusing on? And if you can put in those kind of high level prompts to start to, map out a structure, like that's why I think with marketing, if you start with a brand designer, you start with a really good CMO, and you basically say, okay, CMO, you need to get religion. You need to understand all the elements that you go through. Like when you're developing your brand values, when you're developing your brand tone, when you're developing all the pillars, all that stuff you need to feed in piece by piece to build this profile for your company. And once ChatGPT starts to understand how to talk and think and react, then it starts to actually generate better and better content, and it can actually start to guide you in a better way. But I do think that's why, from my perspective, the first person that really needs to get religion on the AI front is probably the chief marketing officer, somebody who can really understand, like, how can I use this to shape this brand narrative and brand story, which is the key to, basically making the sale, right? Where do you
100%.
where do you start? I mean, like that I'm coming at it from the kind of more of a marketing perspective, but you've been on the engineering side of things. Like, who's the key interface in the business for you?
Yeah, for businesses that are just starting out on this, I would say 100% CMO. Like whoever's looking at marketing, just because the number one problem usually is they're not getting enough leads. If you're getting enough leads, and we're kind of transitioning more on this realm, is to next look into sales, right? So I have another podcast that we recently launched, season 2, AI for Sales podcast, with Chad Burmeister. And, Chad's been working AI for sales for probably 3-4 years now. I mean, he's got incredible tools that are available on the sales side. But if you're not getting enough leads, why are you going to put effort into sales, right? To scale up your sales side. So they kind of like work together. And then the last area is the customer experience. So here is where, you have customers coming in, and this varies greatly depending on the business. But the question then becomes, how do you do things smarter? What's a smarter way to do things on the customer experience side? How do you differentiate, right? I'm working with a gentleman who owns 3 pizzerias, and we're looking at doing a voice answering service for his pizzeria, which will allow you to order directly from his menu, and it interfaces to his point of sale system. He's getting enough calls. He has, like, summer's a busy time for his location. He doesn't need to go out and start doing like Facebook ads or, Val packs or other marketing stuff. He has a ton of people calling there. His goal, his mission now is to figure out how he scales the sales side. How does he complete the orders? How does he complete the customer experience so that people are like, wow, that was great. Like, it's so easy to order from there. I'm going to call there every time somebody answers, they get my order right. It's delivered on time. So it really depends on where you are in your business.
Yeah, that is fascinating, because I think we've gotten to the point where we're sort of used to, an AI operator. I mean, we've got Alexa in our kitchen. My son is asking questions. I'm like, well, Alexa, what's this or that? You're kind of used to having that at this point. So if you're calling to order a pizza and it's a seamless experience, you don't necessarily mind. If it's sort of bumpy and it's like, the cable companies for some reason can't seem to get their AI right. I don't know what it is, but you're like stuck in a loop. But if you can make it work and make the customer experience work, I can totally see that. So you're saying marketing. When you say sales, how do you differentiate that? Are you talking about, you're saying lead generation? How does one actually generate leads better with AI?
So aside from, incoming marketing channels, right? So you look at social, you look at paid advertising, you could look at email marketing. It sometimes blurs between marketing and sales, right? Like email marketing follow-up sequences, that might kind of be like a sales part. I like to think of it as the marketing is responsible for turning prospects into leads, right? That's somebody, you take this huge space of people that might find value in your products and services, and then you create leads, which are people that have shown some interest, that they want to learn more, they want to understand more. That kind of kicks it off on the sales side. So sales is taking a lead to a customer. So whatever your process is in your business that takes somebody who's shown interest in your products and services and makes them a paying customer, that's the process where you want to look at with AI. It could involve, it depends on the business, right? It could involve, phone calls a lot. Like take a real estate company, for example. If somebody shows interest that they want to list their house with an agent, well, now the agent gets on the phone and, there's a process involved there. Maybe they're meeting in person and that agent might use some tools to do like a market analysis on the home. It really depends on the process where these tools come into play.
Well, so let's say that you get most of your customers come to you through a Google search, right? Somebody's looking for the service that you offer in your town or in your area, and that how do you improve upon that? That process, that funnel for lead generation. If you're getting, can you do you supplement it with a paid performance campaign? Can you take that organic lead and find a better way to juice the process of bringing it in? I guess that's the key question is like, how do you best juice the process of lead gen?
So how's the lead coming in? Is the
Somebody
person
searching for
calling
a
in? Are they
divorce
clicking
lawyer
on?
in New Jersey, for instance?
Okay,
I need
so
somebody
then
in
they
Cranberry or whatever. I don't know. I know.
so they click on a Google ad. They go to a website, right? It's usually like a landing page where there's the next step. So at that point, they're still a prospect. It's not until they complete a form or call a phone number that, in my mind, what I'm defining is they don't become a lead until they've actually reached out and they've shown that there's some interest in your products and services. Now that starts the sales process. It could be, if it's a brick and mortar store, they might just walk into your store, right, at that
Mhm.
point. So it really depends. If it's I mean, we could run through an example. Like, for example, if it's a lead capture page, maybe at some point you want to set up a call with somebody, right? So that's like, maybe there's the email marketing campaign, or maybe you're going to provide some free training. Once you get into things like training and videos and pre-selling, there's a lot of AI tools now that you could use to accelerate the production of video.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you think of like in the sales process, you want to pre-sell somebody, right? You want to send them to a web page with a video that's on there that's going to, in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, explain their product or give them information before a sales call. The ability to do that and personalize that, which is very effective, right? Now, you may shoot one video and then be able to modify that video using AI tools to personalize and actually use the customer or the lead's name in the video, which is pretty neat.
Well, I absolutely get AI for marketing and AI for customer experience design. And the sales, I guess I'm just trying to put the connection together in my head. It seems like what you're basically, it's not about the funnel. It's about once they're a qualified lead to turn them into a customer that you can improve
Exactly. Yep.
upon with AI. So taking a qualified lead to a customer, can you give me an example of how AI could actually accelerate that?
So think of I think of a service. Think of something where, let's say there's a sales team, and somebody on the sales team, their job is to make phone calls, right? We get caught up in this digital world a lot, but people still call on the phone, and I'm not talking about just telemarketers that call out of the blue. There's a specific reason. Like, for example, maybe you have a list of all, a bunch of people in a particular town. Let's say you're a real estate agent. You have a list of people in a particular town that, based on information that they've been targeted to be likely to sell their house within the next year. I don't know. Somehow you're able to get the data and maybe use AI, and AI says, okay, here's 200 names in this town that are likely to sell their house in a year. Well, you can make 200 phone calls. Let's say you have their number. You can make phone calls and say, hey, look, I'm in this town. I'm in Princeton. And, I noticed that, your home is is beautiful. It looks like, maybe you're thinking about selling someday. And I just want to let you know that I have all these resources for you, free of charge. Just want to reach out to you, something like that. Well, instead of making 200 calls, there are tools that you can use with AI, which will have clones of your voice, and it'll actually make the phone call. And if the person picks up and starts talking to you, it automatically gets routed to you so you can continue the conversation live.
I see. So you're basically like that, you got to get those little gaps a little bit tighter in those things where you get the call and you're like, I'm just waiting for, yeah, okay, I'm waiting for that routing. And okay, there's the real person. Obviously, you can tighten that stuff up, but yeah, no, I've seen that, and it obviously works. So you've worked with all sorts of companies. You worked with Booz Allen, Bell Labs, the U.S. Army, so some big Fortune 500 companies. What if Coke was using AI and Pepsi wasn't? Like, they have such an infrastructure. Can't I mean AI? I feel like it would tighten up one or the other's business, but it maybe not wouldn't be make or break. But if in your community the pizzeria with with the three chains is using it and the one that isn't, I feel like that's a bigger gap, perhaps. Like maybe I'm basing that just on sort of my gut instinct. Like Pepsi has they don't necessarily need the time efficiency because they can just throw a mechanical Turk slew of people at a particular problem. But when you have a small team and you need to be operating at maximum efficiency, I think that's where AI is going to be the most effective. Is yes or no? I'm sort of putting that to you. That's just my finger in the wind
Yeah,
sensibility.
I think that's a great point, Chris. It's, um, large enterprise companies, they've been using AI for years because they had the budgets to do it. The tools and the tools that are available beyond, like, we're just talking about the surface stuff with Chat GPT and some of these API integrations like Jasper AI. Like, a lot of these tools they're all using the same thing on the back end. It's just the way that they interface it with their applications different. But large enterprise companies, they've been doing, data analysis, data science, machine learning. There's so much that's already been infused in these companies that it's not the same thing that a smaller business would go through just because they don't have the budgets. Where everything changes now is because it's low cost and it's accessible. So if you're a pizza place and you're using it versus a pizza place that's not using it, there's a bigger gap, is what you're saying. It's like the gap is significant. It's almost like online ordering back, years ago before everybody had it. Um, the pizza places that had online ordering, especially restaurants that had online ordering when COVID hit, had a significant advantage. And everybody's trying to play catch up really quick at that. So I think we're going to go through something similar with AI as it starts to get rolled out more and more.
Well, just wanted to let everybody know we're going to take some questions. I have a question on behalf of one of our listeners here. So Bruna is marketing for a Brazilian coffee producer, and they've been there for 230 years. I think the great grandfather, arrived from Portugal and got into the coffee trade, and now there's like 100 cousins on the side of the mountain, all of them growing really great coffee from Minas Gerais, which is their best coffee producing part of Brazil. So the opportunity is, can you use AI? Can you build a system where you can take the farm to table movement, which is big in the US in terms of produce, right? And turn it into an international, getting that coffee bean roasted and to a customer. So you've got a marketing piece of that. You've got a drop shipping, or, well, you've first of all got to get the the coffee in a roasted form, to a distribution center, all that stuff. What parts of that process would you, if you were going to AI any of that as a starting point, where would you start?
So I would start looking at the process in general and looking at the current technology stack that's being used. So, and I don't know what software is being used to, manage inventory, manage distribution, manage the marketing systems.
You got to understand,
manage
this is a coffee producer. This is like basically going farmer to table, and we can find a distributor slash roaster in the middle. But you're basically taking bulk coffee beans and you're building an operation from the ground up. So they had a roastery in Portugal, but now they're retrenching and refocusing. So and Bruno, if you want to chime in, feel free to. But I love it from a marketing perspective. The idea of farm to cup coffee. Like there's first wave coffee was Folgers. Second wave coffee was Starbucks. Third wave coffee was all these artisanal. We got it's fair trade coffee, and this is direct trade. It's the next generation. But that's where I see like where AI in the right framework can take a small producer, and there's a big organization that could be built around that, and maximize it and kind of create a new industry pathway to a certain extent. So I guess I'm sort of like, let's put on our business development hats and think about this on Bruno's behalf. Like, what would we want to AI first in all of that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's Chris, I think it's a little bit of putting the cart before the horse. To think at AI first. Like I would almost say take a step back. And this is true in general with any business. I think that people tend to jump into AI too quickly. What I recommend that businesses do is let's look at what you're trying to accomplish right now. Like what's the number one goal? So if the number one goal in this case was marketing, just getting the word out, getting a list of or building a list or building a social media channel or building something from scratch of people that might be interested to be customers in this for this particular particular offering. Then if that's the goal, then I would look at AI tools that help you do that. And I mean, this is something near and dear to your heart. Is the whole story here is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
The beautiful part of the story, being able to tell that story. So it doesn't replace marketing. Like you still have to do marketing. You still have to use there's a technology stack involved with marketing. And then once you figure that part out, what's going to be your process, what's going to be your strategy, and the tactics behind it, then you could say, okay, here's how we do it without AI, right? Like, for example, that was just going to be really simple here. I'm going to post three posts on social media, right? I'm going to post 3 posts on Facebook, Instagram, and I don't know, TikTok, right? Do 3 posts a day as a human. Well, if that was the tactic, right? The strategy is I'm going to post three times on social, and that's what I'm going to do. Now you can start thinking about, well, let me take a look at AI tools that can help me do that faster, right? And at scale.
Well, yeah,
that makes sense.
It absolutely does. I was just reading Bruna's comment in there, and she's like, "We don't have any software yet to speak of." And I do think that it is like, okay, well, that's where you want to bring that CMO in and say, okay, what's the brand narrative? What are the values? Yeah. How do we take that story and start to build an audience and build some demand for it on the on the US side, right? Because I think like there's a certain pockets where you might want to like focus the people who are into super refined espressos and things along those lines, people who know their coffee for sure. I'm curious also what we might be able to do with a divorce firm in New Jersey. They are a family law firm, and they focus on divorce and family law. They have offices throughout the state. Obviously, it is you tend to need to be obviously locally. You have to pass the state bar, so it's not something. But could you build a knowledge base that starts to become something of a funnel in that space, like for with AI? I'm sort of looking at this starting with the content, but I feel like that's the part where Harvard Business Review, if you're looking for 8 strategies for group decision making, you Google that, you could take into
Mm.
an article. And I think the one thing I find fascinating about AI is you could build an authentic knowledge base fairly quickly, right? So what you've got, search is where the most of the inbounds are coming, right? The people are looking. Maybe you get some through referral, but maybe that's something people don't necessarily want to ask their neighbor about, or can you recommend a good divorce attorney. So search is the main point of entry. I think there's a knowledge base opportunity to sort of build some content marketing channels fairly efficiently. Where would you take the AI microscope and focus it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's a little bit trickier because it's legal advice. But I think about from a knowledge-based point of view, if you're a divorce attorney and you have a website and there's all this content, I've seen ones where it's like, there's tons of blog articles, and then if you do a search either on Google or you do a search on their website, you can find answers to questions that you might have through these blog articles. So I think it's actually a very good strategy to build a knowledge base like that. What I recommend to everybody is, if you can, I know it's a little tricky in this particular example, but if you can, record everything. Record everything. So if you're and you have to be a little bit careful about what you're recording and where it's stored, but think it through and come up with a way to record every meeting that you're doing. I understand client meetings, it's a little bit trickier. Make sure you get permission, and with law, it's a little bit different. But if you can record things, because what you can do is, and I find this happening all the time now, is like, Chris, you and I can have a conversation about AI. If we're recording that, we can go and very quickly do a transcription and then do a summarization and create 5 blog articles from it. Just from a conversation of you and I asking each other questions and answering those questions. So there's a lot of magic that occurs when you're having a conversation with a human that you could turn into something like a knowledge base. So I would think that's kind of phase 1, right? That's like step 1 is to create the knowledge base. And tools like ChatGPT can help you create it in blog format, like a blog article format. Jasper AI is good at that too. The next step, and this is where everything's going, by the way, this is like, you want to take a look at what things are going to be like a year from now, is there's going to be your own ChatGPT capability. So for the divorce attorney, their clients may be able to go on their version of ChatGPT, ask a question, and it doesn't give the ChatGPT answer of it. It gives the answer from that law firm, right? Because that law firm has its own uniqueness. It has its own set of experiences and things that it specializes in, right? And the attorneys that work for that law firm have their own uniqueness. So being able to have your own version of what is now ChatGPT is going to be a powerful service that people could actually offer for a fee as well, for people to use that.
I think it is because generative AI is a content sort of creator. It's instead of you creating a piece of something organically, it's being created synthetically. I do think that content piece is such a big part of it. And as a, content marketer, publisher, former publisher, producer, it for me, it obviously, it really kind of resonates. I think we have another uh, creator on this call, and I thought maybe where would you, for somebody who's building their business on Instagram or YouTube or TikTok, you know, they're in the creator economy, they're building their credibility on their voice. You know, how do you advise them? And because like I think if you just take what you get straight from Chat GPT and you can ask it for, okay, I need a Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, give me all of the captions I need to put in so I can upload my video or whatever, my image or whatever it may be, and you could just take it and you're already a C student, and just by virtue of having it on a fairly efficient process, C student might be good enough to build an audience, right? How would you recommend a creator engage with AI? ChatGPT is obviously at the top of the uh, question, but Opus Pro is a great resource. If you're recording everything, it can show you where the content that you might be able to put out on LinkedIn shows up and that sort of thing. How would you advise a creator to use AI?
Yeah, so I would use AI as its assistant, right? So, and this is what I did when I wrote the book. So I wrote 3 books. The first 2 books I wrote 100% without AI, and they took me 12 months to write, to publish them, 12 months. And then the most recent book, Secrets of Business AI, that was like a couple weeks to get it out the door, like from idea to out the door, being able to, have a physical copy in my hand. And the process works like this. It's just iterative. So you go to ChatGPT, you ask it to write something, and if it doesn't sound like you, ask it to change it, right? So in my example, I would give it information. I would say, here are the top, 5 things that or 5 myths about AI that people believe, right? So I would tell them what the 5 myths are, and I'd say write a few paragraphs on that, and they'd write it. I say, this doesn't really sound like me. Write it more casual tone. So we'll come back and it would be a more casual tone. I say, you know what, that sounds a little bit more like me, but I don't use these words, like those words, a couple words that they used were, and I was like, change this word to something else. And then a couple iterations of that, it really got close. I'm like, wow, I would write something like this. Like, this sounds like me now. I'm comfortable with that. So I would look at it that way as a content creator, is use it as an assistant to get it to do what you would do normally. And it's not perfect. It's not, I think people kind of oversell this a little bit, is that, you just go to ChatGPT and boom, everything's done. It usually doesn't work that way. Usually there's an iterative process involved. But I do want to bring up one thing, back to Bruna's question, if I can, Chris.
Okay.
I kind of understand, when you're first starting out, you have, you haven't even got software, built your tech stack. You can go to ChatGPT and ask it for ideas, right? And that's a really great tool to just get ideas, is to say, hey, look, I would tell my whole story to ChatGPT. Here's what I'm doing. We grow these coffee beans. There's all these farmers. It's a family-run business, generations and generations.
Epic photography.
Yeah, everything. Just tell it everything and ask a question and say, what should be my marketing plan? And see what it says. It's probably gonna give you, it might give you 10 things. I bet 2 or 3 of those are gonna be awesome ideas. And you'll be like, all right, cool. Let's start with that.
Totally. Do you have a hard stop at 12:30? Because I'm starting to get a couple more questions in here. Or what's your? Can you go?
I can spend a few more minutes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not going to keep you over too long, but so Linka basically said we tried it and it's perfect. She also said it's all about credibility. How would you approach it for a brand new business, like with Bruna? You're basically saying it's an assistant, it's a collaborator. It's not it's not your voice. It can't be your voice. The voice, it has to be you. It has to be your brand. Like, how do you
Yeah.
ensure credibility coming out of the gate? Like, you don't just look like a sock puppet for Chat GPT.
Yeah. I mean, there's things you could ask it to tell a story that's your personal experience, right? Like there's I believe there's always going to be things that are not like AI is never going to be able to do this. Like I could tell you what I did this morning, right? I could tell you a story of how I met somebody and here's what we talked about. And, there's like some lesson learned or something there like that. AI would do that, but it wouldn't be truthful, right? It wouldn't be genuine because they just can't like that. They're not, it's not human. So I think anytime you can draw it to something personal, some sort of experience, something that's uniquely you, whatever that might be. That's where the credibility comes from. Whatever your business is doing, whatever that uniqueness is, um, I would I would ask AI to bring out more of that, right? If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes
No,
sense.
no, I think it's so important because if you aren't getting what you want from AI, it's because you aren't asking it the right questions.
Mm,
And sometimes it's a matter of feeding in a little bit of like backstory that you forgot
mhm,
to include.
yeah,
Like it has to understand the whole epic sweep of what you're, basically trying to, accomplish. Otherwise, it's going to key in on the last thing that you fed it. You asked it to do, and it's
yeah,
going to forget maybe if you don't come back to it and say, and that's why like my thing is value centric design, like you got to have a good hierarchy of values. You've got to be like focus on, sort of fulfilling human needs, etc. That's really the very top of what you need to like convey to chat gpt is like we are about ease of use, or we're about whatever that that particular company is, trust in transactions, Venmo, or whatever the case may be. It's gotta know that. It's gotta know like that. And then it's gotta be able to like sort of make all sorts of, it's gotta know all the little bits and pieces. This is why I as a copywriter from way back when you were talking to brands, they wanted to put up a new website, this was back in the days before the NASDAQ, fell apart. If I'm dating myself there, but you found like you had to like really like go through the process of going, what is the brand really about? And what do you stand for? And what does this really mean? Because
mm,
if you're just like trying to sell a product, then it's going to sound like any other product marketer out there. You
mm.
have to be able to sell a brand. You have to be able to sell a story. You have to be able to sell a narrative, and it's got to understand all that backstory to be any good. It's 12:31, and I thought I might, if we don't have any more, we do have a. Oh, thank you. Bring it. Oh, we're getting a compliment from Leica. Thank you for that. Um, I want to understand like what's ahead, not even 5 to 10 years from now. What should we be thinking about AI and what's going to happen and drop in the next 12 months? Like it's been a massive like, and I'm assuming that the shock waves are only going to get bigger. What should we expect next?
Um, so I, so right now, this is what's happening right now is the customization of large language models, right? So if you look at ChatGPT, it runs, fundamentally the model it's using, GPT is a large language model. That's one example. Google has Bard is using Lambda. It's just different models, different ways of doing the same thing. That's all trained on general information. If I'm a company and I want if my employees are starting to use ChatGPT to ask questions, and I want to give them specific information that is going to only be it could be proprietary information, it could be something internal that you don't want to share with the rest of the world. Now those models need to be retrained and fine-tuned with specific information so that the answers that they provide are specific to either the company or information you want it to tell. That's going to be a big push, and we're already seeing that happening with being able to work in private networks. Right now, ChatGPT does use the data that you're giving it to retrain the models. So they are using data. So you should never be putting something you don't want to share publicly with the world into those ChatGPT prompts. So as an enterprise, that's a very sensitive topic. Is you don't want employees putting in stuff. So the personalization and the customization of those large language models, that's going to be a trend, I believe, in the next year, so that people can launch these things and almost make like a chatbot of their company or a chatbot of themselves. If they're like an influencer, we're seeing this now, influencers, creating chatbots of themselves so they can interface with thousands of people, which, it's not possible to do as a human.
Wow.
That's definitely one area I see happen. I also
What do you think
believe there's good. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what do you think the consumer acceptance of that? I guess, all right, I can't actually talk to the influencer I really love in person, but here's this avatar that I can chat with, and it's gonna respond to me in the voice of the influencer. For this generation, anything's up for grabs. Is that something you think is going to have any resistance? I think it'll have resistance on the older folks, but it probably will get adopted. I mean, it does seem like just a whole different realm, right?
It's weird, right? It's kind of weird, but I think it's powerful. And I look at I think of like mentors that I have, or some people that are not as accessible, that I would love to ask them a question. In fact, if you think about it in the business world, if you're trying to solve a problem, what you want to do is just go to somebody who could solve it for you and ask them a question and have it solved. Like, that's the fastest way to do it. So if I want to go to like Elon Musk and ask him how to solve my problem, and he has a chatbot available that will give answers like him, man, I'm willing to listen to what it's going to have to say. As long as it's believable, and I believe there's some value in being able to create something like that.
I think it's fascinating if you actually combine what you're talking about with the notion of record, everything, right? If you want to build a really kind of expert knowledge base, like somebody's probably answered your question before. Let me find it for you. Let me find that, that answer. That to me is that's a compelling idea. Joe, listen, I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I'm so looking forward to sitting down with you later this month. This is going to be just not live yet, but we are going to record the first couple episodes of AI for Business, and I think it's going to be fun. I got a whole bunch of new ideas just based on this conversation today. So thank you. And
nice. We're not even getting warmed up, Chris. We're not even warmed up yet. We're just starting. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, it's such an exciting time. Everything that's coming out, and we didn't even talk about another project I have called Resurrection AI. I'll leave that for another discussion. But yeah, it's just like, try to record everything that you can do, and just. That's my recommendation. And then, as we go throughout the year, we start doing more stuff in Princeton Kaizen, we'll be able to use some of those recordings that people are making. So interested to see what's going to happen. It's going to be exciting times for us.
Yes, it is. And just to do one final plug here, folks, Joe is going to put in some training minis into the Edison plan for Kaizen Academy members. He's also the host of AI for Business, the mastermind on our Mighty Network community. And we will be building out more content together as we go forward. Really looking forward to the partnership with Truversity. I think there's so much here, right? I've said to Joe, like, if we're going to over-index, we ought to over-index on what you do, because that's the piece of this leadership puzzle that is top of everybody's mind. All All right. So that is our first episode of Inside the Innovation Studio. We will be back next week. I have a couple of people I'm talking to. I'm looking to get this on Tuesday. I want to move out of the AI sphere for the next episode because I did spend our first episode talking with Ari just as we introduced Princeton Kaizen, and we spent about 75% on AI. I do think there's other things people do need to be thinking about as well. But thank you, Joe.
My pleasure, Chris. Thank you for having me on.
All right, folks, we'll see you next week on Inside the Innovation Studio.
Bye, everyone.